All right, this video is going to be pretty quick. We're going to talk about I to the first is the square root of -1. So when we talk about I to the first, we're just going to write I. We usually don't write the first power. I squared, the way we get that is the square root of -1, which is I squared. Okay, so I squared, I just replaced the square root of -1. Square root and square cancel, leaving us with -1. I cubed, we can take it as I to the first times I squared. You're looking to add to get the exponents to equal. So I to the first we know is I squared is -1, leaving us with -I. I to the fourth, again, we're trying to get our i's to add up. So we can do I squared and I squared. I squared is -1. -1 times -1 gives us 1. If we go I to the fifth, we can do, we could do I squared times I cubed. I squared again is -1. I cubed is -I, which would leave us with -1 times -I, which would be I. If we went to I to the sixth, we would do, let's say, I squared times I squared times I squared. I squared is -1. -1 times -1 is 1. 1 times -1 is -1. So what you should be noticing is a pattern. So we started with I, we went to -1, then -I, then 1. And now we're starting back at I, -1, I to the seventh should be -I. We can do it as I to the fourth times I cubed. I to the fourth is just 1. I cubed is -I, therefore 1 times -I is -I. So what you should see is that there is a pattern of 4 possibilities. And where this comes into play is if I ask you for something like I to the 17th. So instead of making this long list and figuring out what the 17th is, we can do some 4th grade division and divide 17 by the number of options. In this case, it is 4. So we know that 4 goes into 17 4 times. We would multiply 4 times 4, just doing some long division here. 17 minus 16 is 1, so we have a remainder of 1. What that remainder is the exponent. So we would have I to the first, really, which is just I. If you wanted to represent it in a different way, you could do I to the fourth, I to the fourth, I to the fourth. So this is 4, 8, 12, 16, 1 left over. I to the fourth is 1. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, times I is 1I, or just I. Okay, so same answer, 2 different ways of getting it. Where it comes in handy is if we were looking at like 231. Okay, so if we had 231, we would take 231, divide it by 4. So 4 goes into 23 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract to get 3. Bring down our 1. 4 goes into 31 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. Subtract, we get 3. So we have a remainder of 3. So I cubed, you just have to remember your set of 4. So I cubed is just -I. Okay, and again, you can always find that by doing I squared times I squared is -1, times I gives us -I. Okay, so a little review on 4th grade division. We have our calculators, so again, you can always figure that out using your calculators. So the only ones you need to know, I to the first is I. It's also the square root of -1, which is helpful when we square root. I squared is -1. I cubed is -I. I to the fourth is 1.